Welcome to 6 Degrees of Wiki, a podcast where two sisters find the 6 degrees of separation between Wikipedia articles that don't seem to have anything in common. I'm Nikki.
And I'm Rosanna. Today we'll fall into a Wikipedia spiral where Nikki has just 6 rounds to figure out how the first article could possibly be connected to the last, while learning all sorts of peculiar facts along the way. Let's get started. So far this month, we've spiraled from D-Day to Star.
Round 1.
Today, we are spiraling from Star to Sleepy Hollow. A star, as we learned in the last episode, is a type of astronomical object consisting of a luminous spheroid of plasma held together by its own gravity. Sleepy Hollow is a village in the town of Mount Pleasant in Westchester County, New York, located about 30 miles north of New York City. Nikki, do you see anything that these two items have in common?
So they both start with the letter S, and they also have other consonants and vowels in them.
Wow, that's deep, Nikki. That's really...
Thank you. I was an English major. Can't you tell?
Well, thankfully you're using it for something.
Yes, my kindergarten teacher would be so proud of me today. I have no idea. I have been trying to think of something for at least 10 seconds. I've come up with nothing.
Okay. Well, let's learn more about stars. The nearest star to Earth is the Sun. Stars shine due to the thermonuclear fusion of hydrogen into helium in its core. The energy is released, crosses the star's interior, and then it radiates into outer space. Near the end of a star's life, it can also contain degenerate matter. Astronomers are able to determine the mass, age, chemical composition, and other properties by observing its motion through space, its luminosity, and spectrum. Its evolution and fate are determined by its total mass. Plotting a star on the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram shows the age and evolutionary state of a star. This diagram was developed in 1913 and furthered the study of stars significantly. Here's an interesting fact about stars. The only internationally recognized authority for naming celestial bodies is the IAU, which stands for International Astronomical Union. Private companies that sell the names of stars are considered unregulated commercial enterprises, and they're not recognized by the professional or amateur astronomy community. The company International Star Registry, that was popular in the 1980s, was accused of deception by its customers for making it seem like their star naming was official, and their business ended up being labeled as a scam because it wasn't official.
Did you ever buy one of those star names? I remember they were really popular in the 90s.
Oh gosh, no. What is the point?
There's really not a point.
There's no point in that. I could name a star whatever I want and not pay for it.
That's true. It would be just as authentic as buying one from that company.
Round 2.
All right, Nikki. What do you think the next degree is?
There wasn't much there to work with, Rosanna.
There were a lot of words in that.
Luminosity was a good one. That sounded really interesting. Of course, it just makes me think of the Sleepy Hollow movie with, Johnny Depp and Christina Ricci?
Yes. Classic.
Where there was, glowy stuff. Everything was blue and on fire. It was very weird. I'm going to have to go with luminosity because I can't remember the name of the Hertzsprung-Russell controversy. What was that thing called?
Hertzsprung-Russell diagram.
That. I don't know what that is. So I'm going with luminosity.
Okay. Your guess of luminosity is incorrect. The next degree is outer space.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to connect to the Headless Horseman.
It does seem like I'm getting further away.
It does. Not even inner space, but outer space.
Exactly. Outer space is the expanse that exists beyond the Earth and between celestial bodies. It's not empty, though. It's a hard vacuum-containing particles, mainly a plasma of hydrogen, helium, electromagnetic radiation, magnetic fields, dust, and a bunch of other stuff.
And now I'm picturing all of us and our planets floating around in a vacuum canister that's like owned by a god.
That's a horrible thought. What is wrong with you? The baseline temperature of outer space is 2.7 kelvins, which is negative 454.81 degrees Fahrenheit. So a bit
So like
chilly.
cardigan weather.
Yes, cardigan, yeah. A little cooler than April 25th. The plasma between galaxies is about half of the ordinary matter that's in the universe, and local concentrations of it have condensed into stars and galaxies. 80 to 90% of the mass in most galaxies is considered dark matter, and it interacts with other matter through gravitational forces. For the purpose of space treaties and aerospace records...
Space treaties? There are treaties about space?
Yes, I was surprised to hear that too. So, for the purposes of those space treaties, 62 miles above sea level of the Earth is considered the beginning of outer space.
We talked about that in our Earth's atmosphere episode.
We did. Space exploration began with high-altitude balloons, then manned rocket launches. Yuri Gagarin of the Soviet Union was the first man to orbit Earth in 1961. Conditions in space are really hard on the human body, and that, along with the significant cost, makes space exploration extremely challenging. The Armstrong line, which is almost 12 miles up, is the point where fluids in the throat and lungs boil. So saliva and tears start to boil. So a pressure suit or pressurized capsule are needed if a human's going to go there.
Or just don't. Just don't go there.
Yeah, the article talks a lot about all the horrible things that happen to your body in space. I didn't make notes of all of them. It's pretty graphic.
Oh.
Exposure to the weightlessness of space causes space motion sickness in about half the astronauts. The symptoms are nausea and vomiting, vertigo, headaches, and they usually last 1 to 3 days until their bodies adjust to the weightlessness.
Okay, I get enough motion sickness on Earth. I don't also need it traveling to space.
That's exactly what I thought of when I was reading that. I was like, oh, Nikki can never go to space. She can't even be on a boat.
Nope.
But long-term exposure of the weightlessness causes even more severe problems. So it causes muscle atrophy and the deterioration of their skeleton. Yeah.
That's not okay.
So to offset some of the space flight osteopenia, the astronauts exercise, and that seems to help some, but there's no way to prevent it completely. Other effects of space on the human body are the slowing of the cardiovascular system, a decreased production of red cells, balance disorders, and a weakened immune system, and the effects of radiation. The symptoms of radiation include an increased risk of cancer, damage to the eyes and nervous system, and lungs. So you can go to space and you can be really excited that you went to space, but you're going to pay for it for the rest of your life.
Wow.
Here's an interesting fact about outer space. The Outer Space Treaty, that's in caps, it's an official thing, established international space law in October 1967. It precludes any claims of national sovereignty and permits all states to freely explore space.
That's cool. I'm glad they did that.
At some point, it's going to be necessary.
Oh, yeah.
Round 3.
Okay, Nikki, what do you think the next degree is?
I had a couple of options here.
Okay.
But I'm going with dark matter because it always sounded so spooky. And of course, Sleepy Hollow sounds spooky. And I realize that's very tenuous, but I like it. My guess is dark matter.
Okay, I like that guess. It's a good one. That guess is good but incorrect.
Oh, so close.
The next degree is plasma.
I had that written down before dark matter, Rosanna.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're terrible. Okay, I'm terrible at guessing. That's really what the problem is, and I'm blaming you for my inadequacy. I'm sorry.
It's pretty frustrating when you write something down and that's what it was, but that's not the one you picked to say. I've done that so many times.
Yes.
Plasma is one of the 4 fundamental states of matter, and the term was coined by chemist Irving Langmuir in the 1920s. The other 3 states are solid, liquid, and gas, and they exist freely on the Earth's surface, but plasma does not. It can be artificially generated by heating or exposing a natural gas to a strong electromagnetic field until the ionized gaseous substance becomes electrically conductive. An example of a fully ionized plasma would be the interior of the sun, while a partially ionized plasma would be like a neon sign or lightning. The plasma temperature in lightning can reach 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Plasma may be the most abundant form of ordinary matter in the universe. This is a hypothesis based on the existence of dark matter, but needs more research. Interplanetary space, intergalactic space, and all the distant stars are filled with plasma. 3 common forms of plasma are artificially produced, terrestrial, and space. Artificially produced includes the plasma in TV screens or fluorescent lamps, rocket exhaust, Tesla coils. Terrestrial plasma includes ionosphere, the magnetosphere, the plasmasphere, polar wind, and St. Elmo's fire, which is a weather phenomenon where luminous plasma created by an electrical discharge from a sharp object in an electric field happens, like the mast of a ship in a thunderstorm.
That's always sounded really cool, and I never did see the movie. I've heard about it in reference to, like, sailors, but being on ships in the middle of the ocean, but I didn't know what it actually was.
So here's an interesting fact about plasma. The aurora borealis, also known as the northern lights, are the effect of plasma particles hurled from the sun interacting with the Earth's magnetosphere. The magnetosphere is the magnetic field that surrounds the Earth.
Round 4.
All right, Nikki, what do you think the next degree is?
Okay.
Okay. Wait, hold on. Before you guess, Nikki, I'm going to give you a hint.
Okay, I'll take it.
This one is also not dark matter.
Thanks. You're just making fun of me because I guessed Einstein twice in the last episode.
Well, I did mention dark matter again, so, I didn't want you to think I was throwing you a bone. No bones thrown.
All right, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
There were 2 things that sounded really cool, and since I have already given up on dark matter, I'm trying to decide between St. Elmo's fire and the aurora borealis.
Okay.
Because they both are really cool phenomena.
I agree.
But since you kind of told me about St. Elmo's fire, I'm going to choose aurora borealis, even though I have no idea what it could have to do with a town in New York. Let's go with the Northern Lights.
Your guess of Northern Lights is incorrect.
But I've always wanted to see them.
Well, I can't help you.
Let's crowdsource a trip to Norway for me so I can see
for both of us.
The Northern Lights.
Oh, I want to go too.
Yes. That would be amazing.
It would be amazing. So, the next degree is neon sign.
Come on!
Haven't you always wanted to learn about neon signs?
So much.
Okay. A neon sign is an electric sign lighted by luminous gas discharged tubes, and it evolved first from the Gessler tube, which is a broken glass tube containing gas that is below atmospheric pressure. Oh. When voltage is applied to electrodes that are inserted through glass, an electric glow results. From that came the Moore tube, which used nitrogen or carbon dioxide as the luminous gas, and then neon signs followed. The signs were first demonstrated in their modern form in December of 1910 by Georges Claude at the Paris Motor Show. After the discovery of neon in 1898, neon tubes were used as scientific instruments and novelties, but weren't really developed into a lighting product at the time, mostly because of its scarcity. But then Claude's company, called Air Liquide, started producing industrial quantities. So, by 1919, the Paris Opera entrance had neon tube lighting. In 1923, Claude sold signs to a Packard car dealership in Los Angeles. And then neon lighting just took off in the United States. And signs were displayed commercially in tons of businesses, from tiny little shops all the way to Times Square. And they remained popular until the 1960s. Then the popularity started to drop off a little bit. And then also with the advances in technology, neon tubes are pretty much now being replaced with LEDs. An interesting fact about neon signs. Someone who is skilled in bending glass tubing into shapes for the neon tube signs is called a glass bender, a neon bender, or a tube bender.
I like glass bender the best.
I do too. It sounds like Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm Airbender, and this is my twin, Glassbender.
Glassbender.
Round 5.
Okay, Nikki, we just have a couple of degrees left. What do you think the next degree is?
I had written down a couple of very obscure things because I thought, why not? I can't get anywhere near the rest. Like Paris Motor Show and nitrogen. Mm-hmm. But then you said Times Square, and that's in New York City. And that's in the state of New York. And Sleepy Hollow is also in the state of New York. So I'm going with Times Square.
Okay.
Finally, some sort of connection. Yeah. I feel good about this.
Okay. Your guess of Times Square is...
Wait, I'm just going to say, if you tell me it's Paris Opera, I'm going to reach through this phone, and we're going to have words.
Will they be French?
Sacre bleu!
So, your guess of Times Square is correct.
Oh my gosh! I didn't expect to really be right.
Really? You sounded really confident.
I know, but I was so confident about other ones too.
All right, let's learn about Times Square.
Yes.
Times Square is a major commercial intersection, a tourist destination, and center of entertainment in New York City. It's located in Midtown Manhattan at the junction of Broadway and 7th Avenue. It's been referred to as the crossroads of the universe, and it's easily recognized by its billboards and advertisements. Everybody who's seen a picture of Times Square immediately knows that's Times Square.
Yeah.
It's one of the world's most visited tourist attractions and busiest pedestrian area, drawing 50 million visitors annually.
Wow.
It averages 330,000 people a day. It has a greater attendance than each of the Disney theme parks, and it's the world's second most visited tourist attraction behind the Las Vegas Strip. During the American Revolution, the land was owned by John Moore Scott, a general under George Washington. Early in the 19th century, it was owned by John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. No, I'm just kidding. It was owned by John Jacob Astor, who sold off lots to businesses as the city grew. And he made a fortune.
Oh, I bet.
The first theater, the Olympia, was built by Oscar Hammerstein the First, who's the grandfather of the Hammerstein everybody knows.
Yes.
It used to be called Longacre Square, but it was renamed in 1904 when the New York Times moved its headquarters to One Times Square. And then in 1907, it became the site of the New Year's Eve ball drop.
What year?
1907.
Wow, I didn't know it had been going on that long.
I was really surprised. Times Square grew dramatically after World War I and included tons of theaters and music halls and hotels. The ball drop was placed on hiatus for New Year's Eve in 1942 and 1943 due to the lighting restrictions of World War II. And instead of the ball drop, they had a moment of silence observed at midnight in Times Square. On May 8th, 1945, an enormous crowd celebrated V-Day, or Victory in Europe Day, and then again on August 15th, 1945 for Victory over Japan Day. So the reputation of Times Square declined from the 60s to the 90s due to an influx of adult-themed businesses and bars. Crime during that time increased exponentially. It just went crazy, and it was a terrible, terrible place to be. In the 90s, the state of New York came in and directed restoration and maintenance of 6 out of the 9 historic theaters. And then in the mid-90s, Mayor Giuliani led an effort to clean up the area, which was successful. Times Square now includes attractions like the ABC Studios, where they do Good Morning America, Hershey's and M&M stores, Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, Planet Hollywood Restaurant, and tons of financial and publishing and media firms. Notable signage in Times Square includes Toshiba, the NASDAQ, Samsung, and Coca-Cola. In February 2011, Times Square became smoke-free as part of the outdoor smoking ban in the area, with a $50 fine for anyone caught smoking there.
That's really great.
So here's an interesting fact about Times Square. It's not a square. It's actually more of a bow tie shape.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And here are some movies where Times Square has been fictionally attacked and destroyed. Deep Impact, Godzilla from 1998, Ghostbusters, The Stand, Captain America the First Avenger, and Transformers Revenge of the Fallen.
Round 6.
All right, Nikki, we've got 1 degree left to get to Sleepy Hollow. What do you think the next degree is?
All right, I'm a little torn here.
Okay.
So, Times Square is in the state of New York, and so is Sleepy Hollow. So I wanted to go with New York. But then you said George Washington, and I don't know why, but for some reason I have this indefinable memory that he is somehow connected with Sleepy Hollow, and I don't know how, but I'm going to go with my gut and say George Washington, even though I cannot back that up with facts.
Okay. I know why you're thinking that, and you're going to kick yourself later. Your guess of George Washington is incorrect.
Okay.
The next degree is Broadway.
I did not go there in my head.
I bet you're still trying to figure out how we get to Sleepy Hollow from Broadway.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear about Broadway then. So Broadway is a road. It's a road in New York City that runs 15 miles through the borough of Manhattan and the Bronx, exiting north from the city and then running another 18 miles through the municipalities of Yonkers, Hastings-on-Hudson, Dobbs Ferry, Irvington, Tarrytown, and it ends north of Sleepy Hollow in Westchester County.
Wow, I didn't realize Sleepy Hollow was that close to New York City.
Broadway is the oldest thoroughfare in New York City, dating back to the first Amsterdam settlement, though it wasn't actually called Broadway until the late 19th century. Broadway is known as the heart of the American theater industry, and it's used as a metonym, which we talked about in a previous episode.
Mm-hmm. I love how so many things connect to other degrees that we've done.
It's so weird.
Just out of nowhere, unexpectedly.
Because there's 6 million articles, and somehow we still keep running over the same ones.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Broadway has 2 sections that have nicknames. One is the Canyon of Heroes. It's Lower Broadway in the financial district. It's the location of the city's ticker tape parades. This was the location of a parade for Apollo 11 astronauts in August of 1969. And there are more than 200 black granite strips embedded into the sidewalks listing honorees of past ticker tape parades. The most recent was July of 2015 for the U.S. women's national soccer team in honor of their 2015 FIFA Women's World Cup Championship.
Yes. Go women's soccer.
The second section is nicknamed the Great White Way. It's in Midtown Manhattan, specifically the part that houses the theater district. In 1880, a stretch of the street was illuminated by brush arc lamps, making it the first electrically lighted street in the U.S., and by the 1890s, even more of the strip was lit up. It was so bright because of the lights and the electrical advertising that people just started calling it the Great White Way. Here's an interesting fact about Broadway. Broadway was originally the Wicquaskek Trail, created by the Native Americans that lived in the area. Wicquaskek means birch bark country in Algonquian.
Oh.
And that leads us to Sleepy Hollow. Sleepy Hollow is a village in the town of Mount Pleasant. in Westchester County, New York. It's located on the east bank of the Hudson River, about 30 miles north of New York City. To the south is the village of Tarrytown, and the north and east are unincorporated. Its population is about 10,000. It's known to many people as a setting for the Washington Irving short story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Is that why I was thinking George Washington? I think
that's why you were thinking.
Because of Washington Irving. Oh,
I think that's why.
I think you're right.
It's considered to be one of the most haunted places in the world and is home to the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery where Washington Irving is buried. Other historical places and landmarks include the Patriots Park, Phillips Manor Railroad Station, the Old Dutch Church of Sleepy Hollow, Phillipsburn Manor House, and the Rockefeller State Park Reserve.
I want to go do a ghost tour there.
I think any ghost tour on the East Coast would be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Here's an interesting fact about Sleepy Hollow. Adam Savage, the co-host of Mythbusters, was raised in Sleepy Hollow and graduated from Sleepy Hollow High School. Isn't that adorable?
Yes, I like him.
I do too. Well, we have made it through all 6 degrees. We went from star to outer space to plasma to neon sign to Times Square to Broadway to Sleepy Hollow. Nikki, what did you think of this spiral?
I thought it was really fun.
Yeah?
It obviously did not go where I expected it to go. I'm also really excited to learn more about Sleepy Hollow because I love that spooky stuff.
Now it's time for Cheek of the Week. Our cheek this week are new reviews.
Yes!
Yay, reviews!
Reviews are the best. We have 2 to read on this episode. One is from Justin3131 from Italy. Genius idea, 5 stars. I truly enjoy the idea behind this podcast. I learn something intriguing anytime I listen. Please keep on doing more episodes. Smiley face.
Aww.
We definitely will, Justin. Thank you. That's a really, really nice review.
That was really nice. And our next review comes from Mixtape Montage, who is Justine, the co-host of the Cutaways podcast. 5 stars. OMG, I'm learning. Learning and having a good time? The Cheeky Sisters are geniuses for making a podcast out of something we all do, taking a trip down an internet spiral. Even better, they turned it into a game, and I love playing along. Subscribe now. Thank you, Justine.
That's awesome.
And we recommend listening to Justine and Ashley's podcast called The Cutaways. Justine and Ashley are film editors, and so their podcast is about movies, but they have this really great, unique perspective because they are part of the movie-making process. So it's a lot of fun to listen to their discussions. So we recommend listening to The Cutaways.
And sometimes they have inside info. Thank you, everyone, for your reviews. They're so wonderful.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, if anyone else leaves us a review, we will read it on air.
That's our episode. Tune in next time for another 6 Degrees of Wiki. You can keep up with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6 Degrees of Wiki.
If you enjoyed this podcast, you can support the show by leaving a review, buying 6 Degrees of Wiki merch like t-shirts, mugs, and bags, or even by donating directly to the show at 6degreesofwiki.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.